What's going on, Spitfires? I am so excited about our show today. We are back with interviewing guests, and today is a treat. It is so relevant for the world that we are living in. It's going to be so helpful for you to feel like you're going to get some space back in your life. And I know we all need it. This is an amazing guest that I have worked with in the past. So if you can carve out 35 minutes or maybe a little bit more for afterwards for you to really start to integrate it, I highly recommend that you either wait to do that or you come back and listen even more to pick up on these helpful tips to create more space into your life. And just as a reminder, if you're not already subscribed, head on over to where you get your podcasts or our YouTube channel at Spitfire Coach, or you can go to Spotify, Google Play, Apple Podcasts, or spitfirecoach.com/episode. Enjoy today's show. What's going on, Spitfires? Welcome back to another episode of the Spitfire Podcast. I'm your host, Lauren LeMunyan, and I am joined today by a fellow complicated last name that people just punt and say their first name. I did a podcast on this last week about, how when I go to doctors' offices, they say Miss Lauren, and then I tease them. Brian Trzaskos, is that right?
Yeah, Trzaskos, yeah, exactly.
Trzaskos.
Yep.
You know what? I screwed it up, but I'm going to own it. You have to say it boldly if you're going to do it.
Yes, right.
So why is there a Z if you don't give it emphasis?
It's like that complicated silent Z it's like a snuffleupagus. You can never find it's there, but you can't see it. It kind of messes with people.
Wacky. I thought I was so proud of myself. I practiced. I was like, I got this, and I was wrong. So there you go. Practice all you want. You can still be, you know what? Just ask your guests. That's it. I quit. All jokes aside, we are actually going to talk about a very serious topic, something that's super important and I think really necessary for the world that we're living in, the times that we're living in, and what people are experiencing on an individual basis, what I've seen in coaching sessions with my mentor coaching sessions. And just as a disclaimer, I will say I've also taken core centering with Brian. So I'm not just a fan, I am also a client.
Yeah.
But I asked Brian to do one of our episodes because I just thought that our listeners would really benefit tremendously from what you and Ani do. But they're like, what are you talking about here? So I will let you introduce yourself, and because you're going to do a much better bio than I'm going to stumble around with my little head cold. But kind of give how did you get into this world? What is the work that you do? And then we'll go into our fun discussion.
Oh, cool. Yeah. So Lauren, first of all, thanks so much for inviting me to be here. I'm really excited to have the opportunity to chat with you. Since we met, several years ago now, I've always really enjoyed our conversations, our touch points, the engagement that we've had, and your mission of what you do with Spitfire Coach. I think it's so amazing. I've always enjoyed kind of following you around, listening to your podcast and those kinds of things. So I'm really excited and honored to be here. I just want to say that first off.
Awesome.
I'm Brian Trzaskos, and I'm the Director of Education at the Somatic Coaching Academy. I'm also president of New Health Inc. So under New Health, we have a Somatic Coaching Academy and a couple other academies and practices and programs that we've developed over time. And I say we, primarily my partner and wife, Ani Anderson, that we've done a lot of creation together. So short story, kind of how I got here, trained as a physical therapist by training 30 plus years ago. So I went into PT and ended up working at a top neurological rehab center in the country, working a lot with people with brain injury. So I learned a lot about neurological rehab, how the body heals. And along that journey, I kind of started to recognize that, some people kind of healed faster than other people did, kind of regardless of what their diagnosis or what their kind of accident was. And I got really interested in that. Like, why did some people heal faster than other people? And so that started getting me interested more in kind of holistic kind of ideas of healing. And the holistic ideas of healing really made me understand through deeper study that our physical body is never separate from our emotional, intellectual, spiritual, energetic self. Like we're one always, even though medicine and religion and dogma and all those things have tried to separate the body mind over time, and when people are trying to put it back together, we never actually had it separated to begin with. Like we are body, mind, spirit, emotional, intellectual beings. And no matter how anyone engages with any one of us, you're always engaging with all of us, whether we're engaging through a physical lens or through an intellectual lens or emotional lens. It's still, you're getting everyone, right? You're getting all of us at the same time. And I realized that when it comes to healing, when it comes to health, when it comes to really being centered and present in the world, we have to address kind of all of us in order to make that really happen. Because when we address all of us shows up better. And so through the course of doing that PT training, owning my own holistic practice, owning 2 wellness centers, employing a lot of different people in those wellness centers, being mental health professionals, yoga, tai chi, qigong, massage, occupational therapy, physical therapy, mental health, all those things together. Eventually, we transitioned out of a brick and mortar and we started training people in these practices. So we work with health and wellness professionals all around the globe. We work with professional coaches all around the globe, all working to learn really what we develop in terms of somatic coaching practices now. And the somatic coaching practices start with, you mentioned it, core centering. So our core centering practices are really deeply rooted in ancient somatic practices, primarily from traditional Chinese medicine, because that's where a lot of my background and training comes from. Tell people feel more centered, more present, more vital, right? Have more energy, what the Chinese would call more qi in their body, to feel more energized and more vital, so that they can actually live more full and present and meaningful and enjoyable lives, sort of thing. So I don't know if that did that kind of get us from back there to here where we are to
We
kick
are
us
good
off.
and present and
Okay,
centered.
great.
And I think this is a good jumping off point because the mind body connection is something that's always fascinated me. And my start was in doing CrossFit coaching and understanding when people could physically get past those barriers in their mind,
Mm,
their bodies became so much more capable than they ever thought they would be.
yeah,
That would be possible. But I want to go in a different realm because I feel like your background is amazing and kind of understanding what gets us to this place of function. But you and I both know that right now things are quite dysfunctional.
yeah,
And I'm just kind of curious what you've been seeing as far as people that you're interacting with, because you're out in the business community. So that's how I met
yeah.
you. And also working and training people. And I have to imagine that people are taking their baggage, worries, uncertainty with them and what you're kind of noticing trend wise.
Yeah, well, I think trending, there's no surprise, there's just a lot of uncertainty right now, right? So we have a change at least here in the US, we have a change in administration, and that administration there's a lot of things changing very, very quickly and creating a lot of uncertainty. And of course, along with that uncertainty, the administration there's a high level of unpredictability. So it's not only uncertainty with predictability, it's kind of both of those things. I think, also, Lauren, we live in such a hyper connected world right
Hmm.
now. And you think about over 50 years ago, right? So over 50 years ago, our individual lives might be a lot less kind of certain, more uncertain, let me say, right? So things would happen. So people come into our lives, go from our lives. We maybe have financial distress or something like that going on. But overall, like globally, things were pretty stable. And it seems like now there's kind of like been like almost like a switcheroo, where in our own lives we work so hard to hyper manage our own
Mm.
lives, right? We're on schedules. I get up and I exercise from 5 a.m. to 6 a.m. And then from 6 a.m. to 7 a.m., I get ready for my day. From 8 to 5, I am like working. And in between that time, like I get this meeting this hour, then I have that meeting that hour, then I got this client here, then I'm gonna do this, then I'm that. Okay, and then I'm gonna do and then after that, I'm gonna do that. Right? We're very like, you look at our schedules and they're like do, like very, very, very synchronized. So our individual lives feel or much more controlled,
Mm.
but the globe seems just like completely out of control and
Hmm.
unstable. And so we've almost done like this flip, where it used to be we had a lot of flexibility and a lot of uncertainty in our personal life, or more uncertainty in our personal lives, but the whole globe kind of felt stable. So it
Hmm.
felt like we could manage it. But now it feels like globally, it's just there's so much instability. And we're trying to manage that by, I think, creating more hyper control in our own lives. But the global instability, global insecurities kind of seeping through all that and
Hmm.
finding its way into our somas, leading to these just undercurrents of chronic anxiety is really what I'm experiencing when I talk to our the people that we coach from business perspectives, with our students that come in. There's just a chronic level of just ingrained anxiety that people just don't know where it's coming from.
Hmm.
I think it's coming from this just global sense of what the heck is going on.
Yeah, I haven't heard it described that way, but it makes sense because it's like even though like I'm feeling uncertain, I have this container that I can kind of feel a little supported in my
Right.
orb. But you talk about this hyper scheduling and it's like the rigidity, and over time you can only hold those walls for so long before the
Yep.
cracks happen from the pressure. And I would almost say that in that hyper rigidity, you're creating more and more pressure,
Yes.
so that you then have more friction, and there's no release. There's
Yep.
no I was recently, and I think it was Sargos, and I think I might be um, misquoting it, but it was
Mm.
basically like seeing anxiety in the body is like a well that just like fills up, and then once
Yeah.
it overflows, it becomes this like chronic anxiety, chronic pain. And I have to think there's got to be some correlation now where maybe it was the illusion of control
Mm. Yeah.
that no longer is there.
Yeah. Well, I think you're speaking to it perfectly. That when what even if things felt uncontrollable for us, like we are in this container where at least we felt, well, at least the world's not going to blow up, sort of thing,
Mhm.
right? And again, that seems to be kind of flipped right now. And internally, what we're trying to do is manage that global uncertainty with this hyper self-control by
Mm.
overscheduling. And what you said was exactly accurate. Like the more that we do this hyper scheduling, the less room we leave in, the less we leave in there,
Mm.
right? There's not as much give. And it creates, like you said, it creates more pressure. And so what I really see is this is like a balance between control and resilience,
Mm.
that what most people are really trying to do right now is over control
Mm.
as a reflex. I mean, I'm not saying people are doing this like, hi, I want to control everything and I want to control everything. I mean, some people maybe, but most people I think would rather be able to have resilience and adaptability for when things get bumpy. But the thing is, when we over schedule, when we overpack things to things too tightly, we're using over control, which shrinks our resilience, creates
Mm.
more pressure. And then when something does break, we actually don't have the room to be able to manage it well. And then that creates more anxiety.
Yeah. So if we kind of bring this metaphor into the body and kind of what happens when your body's in this rigid state versus a flexible and fluid state, what happens, what manifests in the body when this is kind of happening on a chronic state?
Well, I mean, just basically when we're living in kind of a sense of rigidity. So just that word rigidity and like over controlling, if we just think about it entering into our neuromuscular system. So just think about our muscles for a second.
Hmm.
And I would just ask you, Lauren, you know, you and the people you talk to, when you have days that are really like boom to boom to boom, one thing after another, after another, after another, after another, after another,
Hmm.
and is there a certain point in the day where you just notice what's happening with your muscles in your body? And like,
Yeah.
what do they tend to feel like?
Well, I have to like go before baby because I've been very intentional to not load my days
Ah,
up like that
yeah,
because I have to be present for the little one.
yeah,
But I remember when we were doing work together and I was hyper loaded with travel and trying to balance multiple clients and projects. And it felt like this wind up in my chest, and I
yeah.
felt like I couldn't catch a breath and also super fatigued everywhere else.
Yeah. Yeah. So there you go. So you have all this, so that's that wind up is chronic tension in the muscles,
Hmm.
right? So think about when we're trying to control externally, the reflection internally is muscle tension, like muscles get tight. And when muscles get tight like that, it's kind of fascinating because they're starting to squeeze. And even if you were to kind of squeeze your hand right now, and
Hmm.
if you squeeze your hand, you look at it and you open your hand, you notice it gets really blanched,
Hmm.
like there's no blood there. So
Hmm.
when you get constriction or contraction, there's no blood. And so when there's no blood, then you don't get oxygen.
Hmm.
And then so you're not getting the aerobic kind of respiration that has to happen. So then you're not producing really good energy, and then you get fatigued. So the chronic tension and fatigue are almost always correlated with one
Hmm.
another. And that chronic tension isn't only creating fatigue, it's also creating changes in your immune system. It's creating more inflammation in
Mm-hmm.
your system. It's elevating blood pressure. It's increasing your blood sugar levels, your cortisol levels, like all kinds of neurohormone changes start to happen in your body that then will lead to more chronic disease, chronic stress, of course, which is the precursor for any chronic disease problem. So now you're dealing with sleeping issues, not sleeping well, which affects your brain function, and then it makes it more difficult to deal with things that are happening in the world, which creates more anxiety. There's
Mm-hmm.
less in, you can kind of see the cycle that starts to happen.
Yeah. But then what I notice, so I'm not going to name names, but people
Yeah.
in my life have all these things that literally have the same root cause, but they are so reluctant and resistant to facing the source of the anxiety, to
Yeah.
actually say, this is anxiety. So they go and make tons of doctor's appointments. They're taking medications. They want a diagnosis that is anything other than it is anxiety or something that's going on internally. So where do you see or have you seen this? And then what would you recommend for someone who is resistant of like, oh, that's some woo-woo stuff. Like, yeah, okay, that's for that person, but I have real problems. I need to go see 14 specialists because I can't sleep. So I'm sure you've encountered
Oh
something
yeah,
like that.
all the time. Yeah, all the time. And so, on one hand, the one of the most difficult things for me as a professional in this area to have had to deal with and grow with a lot over time. There's a wonderful little passage in the Tao Te Ching that says, witness the turmoil of all beings and
Mm,
contemplate their return.
mm,
Their return to the source is serenity, which means that like we're all from a common source. We all come from one common energy in the universe, right? There's essentially, if you look at quantum physics, if you really understand the science of that, we're all connected through one common energy. We're all live in one field. Now, not everyone recognizes that.
mhm,
And when we don't recognize that, that creates turmoil in people's lives.
mhm,
And so some people are ready to want to ease the turmoil, and other people are still gaining something in their individual lives from living in the turmoil.
mm,
So it's always comes at a matter of where people feel like they're gaining more than something than they're losing, because that's how humans function. We'll always make decisions subconsciously, primarily on more gain than loss. And oftentimes that more gain than loss is time dependent, and it's more immediate gain than loss. So for a person who continues to seek answers from uh, 14 doctors, on some level, what they're doing is they are still perceiving that there's more gain associated with having an answer from a doctor than not, sort of thing.
mm.
And typically, what I've experienced with people, there's a tipping point at some point in time. For a lot of people, there'll be a realization, and they'll say, "Wait a second, you know, I'm not finding any answers outside of me."
Mhm.
And so then it's just a question from someone, are you interested in finding those answers inside of you? And I sometimes have to just keep asking the same person that same question over months or even years
Mhm.
until they get to the point and they say, Brian, I finally hear you. Like, I know you've been asking me this question for years, and I'm finally ready to look for those answers inside myself
Mm.
to see how am I actually correlated with what's going on in my experience.
Well, I have to
And
imagine that that's a huge load for someone to become aware of. I know
yeah,
in my work as a coach, when people wake up to the fact that they've kind of created this reality for themselves, it's exciting, but it's also like the shame that's on it of what have I done to
yes,
myself? And the ownership of how many people have I hurt, including myself, and how do I put this back together? And so I have to imagine that there's a lot of reluctance and hesitation and overall rejection, as opposed to opening that door a little bit and wondering what else is going to come flooding out.
100%, 100%, Lauren. We've been most of us have been so programmed with guilt and shame as being a methodology to not do something, to not face something. And so, of course, if when we look closer at ourselves and we say, wow, I must have something to do with all the things that I have going on in my body. So for me, it's like, I'll be perfectly transparent. Like I've had a long history of chronic back pain in my past, from a very young and early age. And it did take me a long time to get to the point where I could face myself and say, how do I, like, what's my responsibility with this? And not responsibility like I did anything wrong, because a lot of that, what we learn, we uptake very, very early in our lives. We
Mm-hmm.
don't really have a choice around it. It just gets kind of absorbed into us. Also, society has a lot of pressure from social pressures to take up life in a certain kind of way. So here's the tricky part, though. It's when you finally find someone that you can work with that that helps you release, or allows you to release the guilt and the shame, to actually look at yourself in a very non-judgmental way and
Mm-hmm.
say, listen, there's nobody's fault here. There's nothing wrong. Like, let's just say something is happening. This is what's going on right now. And then the only question is there anything you'd like to do about it?
Mm-hmm.
Are you willing to learn about it, to do something about it? And can we let go of any wrong making around it? And for a lot of people, that's actually where most of the work is, right there, is like really letting go of the guilt and the shame, and the fault making and all those kinds of things, the pressure we put on ourselves, only because we've been taught and conditioned that way so much.
Yeah, and doesn't this link beautifully to back what we were talking about of that internal pressure from
Yes.
scheduling? And it's really that internal dialogue of, well, what happens when you don't stick to that schedule? And what happens if you don't get the outcomes you want and you aren't living that expected life journey that, society has built or your family has built or whoever, whatever institution is out there. But I always, go back to my clients and say, so who do you think set that system up? And what do they gain by you playing into it?
Yeah.
Who wins? Because you're
Yeah.
not winning.
Yeah, 100%. And the interesting thing is we learn this stuff so young, Lauren, that I mean, so for me around my back pain stuff, it was hard work. Like that was kind of like one of the patterns I was conditioned to just work hard
Keep
all the
grinding.
time, keep grinding,
Yeah.
like just keep working all the time. And it was interesting, I would never give myself any kind of rest. I mean, I literally had to be like flat out laid out with
Mhm.
either an injury or like really, really sick to even stop what I was doing at all. And even then, I'd be like crawling out of bed to do one more thing, sort of thing, just keep going. And when I finally woke up, what am I doing? I
Yeah.
mean, how, like the question, who's gaining from this? And I realized, oh my God, this is like a lineage of
Hmm.
like generations have been taught to do this and to value kind of being this way in the world. And it's actually creating for me more dis-ease in my life than it's creating it worked to a point, and
Yeah.
then after that point, it became a complete liability.
Yeah. You get to a certain point and then it just starts working against you. That's what I have noticed in myself and in other people. And it's interesting because you said, who am I being? And like that is usually the transition where it's, what am I doing? Or what do I have to do to who do I want to be and become? And once we can kind of even take ownership of I can change that at any moment. If I don't like how I'm being, what do I need to do? Not even do, but who do I need to become in order to
Yeah,
kind of embody this existence that I'm here?
yeah, exactly. I love that. It's one of my favorite questions. That's actually a natural law, a question based in natural law.
Love it.
Yeah. So who do I need to become to have or to create the world and the life that I want to create? There's one more little things occurring to me as we're talking to Lauren. The question about you know, uh, someone who's kind of chasing around external kind of solutions to an internal problem. There's another really great quote from traditional Chinese medicine that says, enlightenment comes through a sick stomach.
Mm,
And it's like one that, when I first read it, it just caught me so like just by the shirt sleeve, and it won't let me go. And I've really leaned into it a lot over the years as I've met with people. And there's really a ton of truth in it. Enlightenment comes through a sick stomach. Like unless you were suffering from something,
hmm.
like why would you seek something
Right. You just keep
better?
tolerating it.
Right. And so a lot of the people that I've worked with through the course of my time who have really I think we can banter on that word enlightenment. I mean, who
Hmm.
knows? But who have experienced enlightened states during their life. And so what's an enlightenment? It's like really when we realize something about ourselves and our connection to the universe that we hadn't experienced before. I kind of consider that like a little mini enlightenment. I
Yeah.
don't think enlightenment is like an ongoing state anyway. I think we have these little blips of it, and then as humans, we hopefully we do things to try to experience those states more.
Mhm.
But people I've met in my life and work with who experience those states have almost exclusively come out of states of suffering that they've been in, and it's been a conscious decision to change it.
Yeah, I was just thinking like, nothing kind of wakes you up more than waking up on the bathroom floor
Yeah,
from a night of imbibing too much and make you question your life choices.
yeah,
But yeah,
exactly.
but that's exactly right. It's like, they talk about rock bottom for some reason, but it's like, it doesn't have to be a rock bottom. It could just be kind of like, when have you had enough? And when is the pain too great that you're willing to do something different?
Yeah, aha. I mean, that's exactly it. And we kind of come back, Lauren, to thinking about like kind of globally what's going on right now. I mean, I liken the same thing to what's going on globally right now
Hmm.
is that, apparently globally, the humans have not experienced enough pain or suffering in order to make different decisions,
Hmm.
like choices towards really trying to true unity,
Yep.
true compassion, true respect for each other. Like obviously we're not there yet, because otherwise we'd be there, but we're not there. So
Mhm.
obviously we haven't had enough suffering yet, kind of globally. And I think coming out of the last couple of months, like those lessons, I didn't want to believe, I didn't want to see that lesson happen. I really
Right.
didn't. Like, and
Right.
and I think that was one of the most challenging things for me over those last few months. I was like, well, I guess we're taking that ride. I guess people are not, we just have not suffered enough yet.
Yeah. Well, I mean, just looking back, we've been in kind of, I'm going to use state of peace globally for, 75 years. This is cyclical. And so,
Yeah.
um, that's why every time someone says it's unprecedented, it's like, it's really not. This is history repeating itself. And in some other fashion, we are now living in uncertainty and fear, because we don't, basically, our whole way of being is going to completely be uprooted.
Yeah.
But there are still things that will be maintained. But I think, it goes back to, and I hate that I don't even want to say his name, where, he asked the question of, what's not going to change in five
Yeah.
to 10 years. We're not going to
Yeah.
name his name because I'm mad
Yeah.
at him.
Yeah.
Um, but that has become my new mantra in the morning of what
Mm.
is the same, what is rooted down and so firm that even if everything is on fire and collapsing around, what is true? And I always go back to my health, my family, my brain, my resourcefulness, my creativity, my friends, like those core value elements. And I think when things are easy, when things are functioning, we lose sight of that, or we can.
100%. I agree. We kind of got uh we lulled, right? We got kind of a little lulled to sleep. We were a little pacified
Mhm.
in a little dip there, and then there's a kind of revving of just again this global uncertainty. I think the one thing I agree with you 100%. And I think the one thing that's different in the last like 75 years ago cyclically is we're just so much more connected now
Yes.
globally than we were.
Yeah.
And because of that, there's such a rapid spread of energy and a rapid spread of information globally that literally there's nowhere to hide anymore from anything
Mhm.
going on anywhere in the world. And so there's just almost like a more widespread effect
Mhm.
globally
It's
because of
faster.
our interconnectivity that we have now.
I would also add that in addition to the interconnectivity, there is also the disconnection from personal relationships. So you have more isolation than ever before, more loneliness.
Yeah,
So I don't know about you, but like when you're afraid and uncertain and you're getting scary things and news in your head, like your brain's not really coming up with constructive things to tell you.
exactly. Yeah,
So I can imagine that's kind of spiraling the effect too.
Oh, 100%, 100%, which we talk a lot about in core centering, right? We say, a lot of these core centering practices and these ancient practices based in traditional Chinese medicine and somatic experiences and practices and such are really, they're so lovely because they're so body focused. And to start off with, and the body focus, it kind of just gets us out of our head for a
Mhm.
moment. I can't tell you how many people I've had conversations with in the last couple of months, Lauren, where the only advice I have for them is, get out of your head and get into your body.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, oh my God, you're right. Like, because in their head, they're just spinning and spinning and spinning. And when I just say, let's just do some core centering work. Let's get centered in the body. Let's start to change what's happening physiologically. Let's start changing that muscle tension. Let's start changing those neurohormone profiles. Let's start changing some of those electrical signals. Then that starts from the bottom up to change how we think and how we feel in the world, how we perceive the world. Because, our thinking mechanism of our brain, we have to remember, is sitting on top of our perceptual mechanism,
Mm-hmm.
which is sitting on top of our physiological mechanisms. So if our physiology is out of balance, of course our perceptions are going to be out of balance. Of course our thinking is going to be out of balance.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if we go back and we balance our physiology, then our perceptions have a chance to become balanced. And when our perceptions are balanced, then our thinking becomes more clear, more free, more creativity focused, more solution focused, and we feel more connected and less lonely as well. So for us, like a lot of it is just, let's get out of our head, get right back into our body and do some practices that really start to balance and align our physiology and our internal energy systems. And then everything above that can actually become more functional.
Okay, so for people listening, we're going to be very descriptive. So getting back in your body, if someone is like all up in their head, what's like a simple getting started core centering exercise technique that they can do to just kind of let the unwinding start?
Yeah, one of my favorites and one of the most simple ones. I know you're gonna know what I'm gonna say, right? Is to just get up and do some shaking. Like
Oh,
just get
the
up,
blither.
the blither. Like
It's so good.
get up and do some blithering. So what's a blither? You just get up, should I just get up and
Yeah,
do a
go ahead.
blither?
Go
Yeah.
for it. I'm going to
So
describe it. So Brian's getting up.
yeah, so you just get up and get out of your chair and let me just adjust my camera really quick for
I would
your
get out with
viewers.
you, but I'm up against a wall, so I don't
Yep.
have any
Yeah. So
space.
you just get up and you start shaking a little bit. And we have to realize is that animals in nature, when they're stressed, they shake. That's what they do. And as humans, though, we were taught to stop shaking, usually about when we enter kindergarten,
Mhm.
and the teachers tell us to sit in our chairs and stop wiggling
Sit
around.
still.
Yeah, sit still, stop wiggling. And if you don't, then you become a social deviant, and you get put in the corner with a cap on or something. And so, right, we become social outcasts, and nobody wants that. So we stop shaking. And unfortunately, what happens is then the schools and teachers are taking away our primary physiological balancing mechanism. And not only that, then we're made to feel foolish for doing it. Right. So when I ask people to get up and shake, adults to get up and shake, they go, I feel foolish. I don't want to do this. And I said, you were taught that too.
Yep.
Because before 6, you would do this all the time and we never felt foolish. So what happened? You were taught it. Anyway, so you get up, you shake around, you just do some shaking, and then you take a big deep breath in, and then you relax your jaw and you kind of do like these horse lip things. You just kind of shake out the system. And you can shake and blither for 5, 10 minutes, something like that. And
I always like to
shake
describe it
and
as like
release the
shaking out like
tension.
a wet dog, like you're gonna try to propel the
Yeah,
water
exactly.
across the
Yeah,
wall.
totally. That's it. Yeah, like just shake all the water off. Do it with your dog, do it with your animals, teach your kids to do it, normalize it for your family and for your friends and for everybody. Because it just from a physiological basis alone, if you're just looking at physiologically, this is one of the most beneficial things you can do 2 or 3 times a day because all other animals do it. Your dogs do it, your cats do it, squirrels, birds. Just look in nature. All the other animals are doing this, but as humans, we're like, oh, I guess we don't need
Turn
this.
it.
We're too high and mighty. We're too smart for this.
Right. Yeah,
You
it's fun. And
know,
also when you do it with a group of people, you can't help but laugh, which also makes you feel amazing and
yeah.
connected to other people.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely, and that's a huge, again, internal balancing mechanism. And I really think wherever we're going as people in the world, right, as humans, really what we need to do is be focusing more on resilience
Hmm.
than control. And I think we've kind of maxed out our ability to really trying to control ourselves.
Mm.
Think about that. I mean, how many
Yeah.
people you see out there are actually losing quote unquote control? That's because we've maxed out, I think, our capacity for control
Hmm.
and hyper rigidity. And I really think that we need to kind of bring in a more sense of resilience. And by resilience, I mean physiological resilience. I call it actually micro resilience,
Hmm.
sort of thing, like on a daily basis. What can I do every day to create more space in my physiology and a little bit of space in my body, a little space in my day, a little space in my thinking, a little room to be able to connect with people. Those things are so important right now. They're so critically important
Yeah.
right now for us as a people and as a species.
Yeah. So my takeaway from this is to really focus on the micro environments that we can create within ourselves when the macro feels even crazier and out of sorts. So go back to center within yourself and create like what is the microclimate environment you want to create within your body? And then where else can you create that space physically or with relationships and everything else that you're doing? So like first starting with that primary source and then letting
Yes.
it kind of ripple out.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Because, I don't know what the next day, week, months, years are going to bring. I mean, there's no one I don't think has a fortune ball, fortune ball, crystal ball. Yeah,
Crystal
fortune teller
ball,
ball, crystal
fortune
ball. Yeah.
teller, crystal ball. Yeah.
I was just putting them together to be able to say where we're going. But I do know this. I do know that whatever lies ahead, the people that are going to have a voice and an opportunity to create and craft whatever's coming in the future are the people who can create the resilience now to be able to be there.
Mm,
Because again, hyper control, hyper stress, all that pressure, we know that creates disease. We know that creates problems. We know that decreases people's capacity to sustain and thrive. So for me, it's all about, if I want to be a part of the voice, or if the people I work with want to have a voice in the future, what we really need to do is create more adaptability and resiliency within ourselves so that
mm,
we can navigate through whatever rapids are going to be coming in the near future for us.
definitely. My husband, when I first started dating him, and I think he still has it on his phone. His cover image is "Relax, nothing is under control."
Yeah,
And I
that's
was
it,
like,
right?
"That's
Perfect.
not true." And now I'm like, "You're so right.
Yeah.
You're so
But
right."
but you don't have to admit it to him openly.
Oh no, no, I do. I
Okay.
actually will. I'll give him the brownie points. It's okay. I'm healthy in my relationship.
Okay.
So, big news, the Somatic Coaching Academy has all ICF accredited courses. Is that
Yeah, we
right?
do. Yeah, for core centering, our level one, for level two, somatic transformation fundamentals, and for level three, somatic coach professional. All three levels have CCEs for ICF.
Love it. It's amazing. I have taken core centering, and probably will continue on my journey there. So I absolutely recommend anywhere someone's like, I'm looking for trauma informed or getting into somatic awareness. And I was like, go check them out. Go on,
Awesome.
go take the courses, get started. And if anything, just do it for yourself. Because I'm still using like the tricks.
Yeah.
And I was at the Y getting my membership, and I was teaching one of the women behind the front desk the 50 taps on your shins to
Oh,
give
nice.
yourself
Yeah.
energy because she's yawning. I
Yeah.
was like, "Can I show you something?" And she's like,
Yeah.
"Yes." So that's like my own little like fun in the world of challenges of how many people can I like plant these seeds of core centering techniques with. But I wanted to just highlight that because, you and Ani are doing amazing work, individually, but then you're really helping to train up people to go and spread these amazing techniques, which don't cost you anything to do. Like you don't
Right.
have to have a gym membership. You can learn them and incorporate them and teach other people. And so if we're going to get through this time, which we will, we got to take really good care of ourselves because I am for certain well-being is the greatest form of rebellion.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. I love that. So is that your next is
That's
that your
my
next
new that's my new
book
mantra.
title or new mantra? I love that. Well, that's fantastic, Lauren. That's great.
Yes. So rebel against the craziness by being really kind to yourself and taking really good care. So I would love, what is one golden nugget that you would love to pass on to our listeners?
You know, I'll tell you the thing I've adopted in the last couple of months also is I've really come back to the serenity prayer. Lauren, to be
Mm,
honest with you. And I think speaks exactly what we're talking about. Like, grant me the serenity to accept the things that I can't change. Because
mm,
right now, there's some things that as an individual, like I just can't change.
yeah.
Now, the courage to change the things I can. I can change a lot of things about what's going on in my own life. Like I can change that. And the wisdom to know the difference. Because if I spend too much energy trying to focusing my attention on things I cannot change, that will create absolute anxiety and loss of a locus of sense of control for myself. But if I focus on the things I can change, if I have the wisdom to know the difference, and I do change what I can change, that will help me become a more resilient,
Mm.
loving, compassionate, connected human being. And no matter what happens in the world, I'd rather be in the world that way personally.
Love it. Well, as a kid who used to go to AA meetings with my mom when I was a little one, I'm very familiar
Yeah.
with the Serenity Prayer. It's coming full circle in my life now, a whole different way.
Yeah.
Brian Trzaskos, this was amazing as always. And if people want to check out the Somatic Coaching Academy, where should they go?
They can just go right to the web,
The webs,
www. Go to the webs. I'm a Gen Xer, so I gotta be like,
www.
go to the web. Just go to somaticcoachingacademy.com and you can find out there all about our public classes that we have going on, our kind of free demos that we have going on regularly. You can opt into the newsletter, to the library, get tons of information, check out the Somatic Coaching Academy podcast, and then any of the levels trainings that are coming up. And we're super excited to be back at Kripalu again this year for a core centering, for an in-person core centering retreat as well, which is going to be fantastic. So there's lots of stuff going on there. And reach out, say hi, and ask any questions that you need answered.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for spending your time with us and sharing your wisdom and helping us all be a little more chill and centered through however long this is going to go on. And to all the Spitfires out there, y'all keep being awesome.
Thanks, Lauren.
Thanks.